because these people are ruining it for other people.
Fuck them.
Fuck them. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Deep Drop for another episode. This is a fishing podcast that asks some tricky questions and puts some answers to them that may or may not make sense. We're not promising anything. I'm Luke McCredden. Adam Ring is with me as always. And Ads, is that how you sort of explain it? If you were explaining to someone who's never heard it, how are you explaining it?
I think you nailed it. Making sense is definitely not our forte, but we will have a crack at putting some words together that form a sentence to give you our opinion on some of these questions. And we invite you to share your opinion too, because that's what it's all about.
Well, the best answers are coming from our listeners on Instagram, certainly not us, that's for sure. Anyway, let's get into it for another episode.
Mono or braid for trout?
Quite the interesting question there, Adam. I think this is one that's sort of come up over the years and I've never really thought too hard and deeply about, but there are several reasons that I tend to hear arguments for and against either. So I think there's a case for either, and I don't think there's a necessarily right or wrong answer either. But again, happy to be steered in a different direction and proven completely wrong. But I think one of the things that I hear a lot of when I do think about this question or talk about this question is that a lot of people are using mono to avoid things like wind knots and tangles and because it can be a messy experience. Now I'm talking, when I say my angle on this for trout is fishing in rivers, wading, casting along the rivers and that sort of thing. So I know there's many different ways you can fish for trout, I suppose, but that's what I think of. So when I listen to people say, "Oh, I don't bloody braid, I just get it tangled in the trees and the branches and wind knots and bloody all sorts of, because you need real fine braid," I get that. I think that's a fair call. Personally, I use braid. What about you? I
use braid, and it's hard to go back to mono because it feels like you're fishing with a rubber band. It's so stretchy. But again, I completely understand why people do it. And with the introduction of fluorocarbon as well, even the lure stuff that you would do for trout, especially in a stream environment, it's more than doable as well. So I completely get it. I've tried the fluorocarbon thing. To be honest, it wasn't for me. I just didn't enjoy it as much as what I did with braid. Bait fishing, I don't do a hell of a lot of bait fishing for trout. It's something I actually do need to do more of because I think it's a hugely successful way of catching them. I think I would still probably use braid, maybe with the experience of issues with braid in bait fishing in a fast water environment, then maybe I might change, but I would prefer to fish with braid more often than not.
One of the things I hear a lot of and have been a part of conversations about too is leader or not even using leader at all, using mono or fluorocarbon straight through. And there's varying arguments for it. And part of it is a visual aspect, isn't it, Ads? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about being able to, the fish being able to see or not see particular materials?
Yeah, there's a bit of that. I think it's also it's a connection thing too. Braid can be very harsh. It can affect hookup rate. It's not very great in and around snags, depending on which braid that you're using. There's a heap of different things. I would always encourage anybody fishing braid in any circumstance to use a leader. Actually, I don't think I've ever fished any sort of lure or soft plastic with braid tied directly to a jig head or the lure. I know it can be done. I actually know it's the way they do it a fair bit in the States.
I did it once when I was fishing a beach on the south coast of New South Wales, just having a bit of a flick, one arvo, busted off and realised I left all my leader back at the house. So I just tied the braid straight to this metal slug and I felt like it was just so wrong. But hey, still caught a few tailor and salmon, so it was okay.
Yeah, it definitely, this is the beauty of it. There's no rules. We can go into all the finer detail on why you would use a leader or why you wouldn't, or why you would use mono, and why you'd use braid, but just do what feels comfortable. I'd feel comfortable using braid and a leader, and that's what I'll continue to do until it doesn't work for me anymore.
So going back to the question, mono or braid for trout, fair to say use what you're comfortable with. Use what you're used to using from a fishing sense, but also what you're comfortable fishing with that you think you'll still get a fish. Is there, my final part to this for you, is there any major advantage over one or the other, or do you think they'll both get the job done?
They'll both get the job done. I think there's enough that you can do with modern tackle to adapt to the way you want to fish. So that's kind of the way that I approach it. And if if you don't like braid because it's a pain and you're not confident with win knots or join knots from leader to braid, use mono.
It can be an absolute pain in the ass.
It can be. I know how to join the two and I still hate it. Should fisheries go harder on penalties?
Yeah, for sure. Make it really hurt. Now this. I know, and I mean that. I think they should for sure, and there are definitely penalties in place, and people get fined heavily and lose stuff like boats and cars and whatever, and that would hurt. But I look at the fines in particular and just think they're not going hard enough. And I'm talking about those busts of like massively over bag limit, massively undersize things where you go, this isn't a bit of a muck up. This isn't where you've gone, oh, I've accidentally kept that. This is someone just going out and just being ridiculous and taking the absolute piss and not giving a shit. I reckon up those fines, I don't know, 10-fold, 100-fold. I don't care. Make it hurt for them. Make them realise, yeah, I've really fucked up.
I wonder how they come up with a dollar figure to place on a fine anyway.
Especially when you see some of them are like $762 fine.
It's like there's an admin fee or two in there that's worth $2.35 at the end of the day. They definitely do need to be stronger because I think it's also got to be relative to what they're doing. Like if old mate's down on the pier and he's kept 35 calamari because he's on the greatest session ever, and you're quite confident he's just a punter blatantly doing the wrong thing, awesome. Like, you know what? Take his rod and reel, let him drive his car home. He can have that. Take his rods and reels just to make it a pain in the ass for him. Make him pay his $435 fine and happy days. But if you bust old mate with his 65 abalone, selling him to another dodgy restaurant owner who's blatantly doing the wrong thing too, the hammer's got to come down. Ultimately, that's what is going to kill our fishery. They should be fined into effect that takes into account that they could have made a lot of money, because I've heard stories in the past of some of these morons that are collecting and taking too many fish, whether it's in a legal or illegal manner, and then selling them to restaurants or wherever. It doesn't matter where they're selling them to. The fact of the matter is they're selling them, especially these high-profile species of fish like abalone. The fine doesn't mean anything to them because they've made and or making so much money out of selling illegal fish that they're taking and collecting illegally. The fine doesn't matter. It's nothing. It's just a blip on the radar. It's like, we got busted. Let's pay the fine, keep them off our back, and happy days, carry on. So that's where I think it's hard. It's what penalty or what dollar figure matches the crime.
Lock them up. Lock them up, ads.
Well, I know some of them do end up in front of a judge pleading their case, and that's awesome. But fines don't seem to scare some of the more elaborate schemes.
Yeah.
But I agree. Overall, I think fines should be raised. It shouldn't be an option to even do it.
No, the ones that you're talking about, it's a form of poaching, right? Like in other parts of the world, mate, you're lucky to see the light of day again if you're caught poaching.
Yeah.
You know, we're in a very lenient country, which is a great thing. But when it comes to this stuff, there shouldn't be any two ways about it, mate. If you're doing that sort of stuff, I don't know. I think a fine, like you said, I don't know if a fine's even nearly enough. It's easy to sit here and say, and I'm sure that we'll get some feedback on Instagram. I'd love to hear what other people think about it. The rules are very clear. The rules are very, very clear, especially when it comes to bag limits, size limits. They're published everywhere. We're in the world of technology. You've got it at your fingertips on your phone. You've got them still printed. You can get handbooks at any tackle store you go to. The stickers, there's everything that you could possibly need to make sure that you know what the rules are. The ones that are doing it, like selling it into the black market or restaurants or whatever, they've got no regard for rules. They're just doing whatever they want. That's a different beast.
It's a scheme. It's not just, taking a few too many fish.
The rules are very clear. The authorities here in Victoria specifically do very well at keeping on top of things, and have regularly posting on their social channels that they've caught old mate doing this, and which is good. But I see the fine amounts and just think, no, that's not enough. Because these people are ruining it for other people ultimately.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And that if it's bad enough and enough people do it regularly, that's what leads to bag limit changes and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, I agree with you. It's 100% not on. I think we should see higher penalties, or penalties to a point where at a everyday level, people will be meticulous with how many they've caught and what they will ultimately decide to take home.
For sure. Fuck them.
Fuck them. How long can you post photos of a fish on social media after the event?
It's a great question. It's a good question, but it's not. It's one of those ones that we've had on this show before, Ads, where it kind of, we shouldn't need to ask this question.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little bit like that.
There's some serial multi-posters out there that it drives me insane. Hey, each to their own. They all own their own and have the rights to their own social channels. Do whatever you want. But if you're catching a fish, you're either posting it that day, or maybe it's the next day once you got home and gotten things unpacked, or maybe it's the end of a fishing trip and there's a bunch of photos that you want to put up on the socials. And that's great. But we don't need to see it for 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Am I being too harsh?
No. Because I think we both agree on, we'll be lenient. 48 hours. You've got 48 hours from the time that you took that photo, that fish can go on social media. But, what's more offensive, Luke? I'm going to answer your question with another question.
Yeah.
What's more offensive? If you see the same fish from that trip in multiple posts over the next 2 weeks, or they do the right thing and post it within 48 hours, but then 2.5 months later,
or it resurfaces.
It resurfaces with a flashback Friday or
throwback Thursday. Oh, that could be worse, actually. That could be worse. If no one liked it the first time, mate, no one's going to like it the second time. Now, I think, can I just jump back to your 48-hour rule? Might be a bit harsh. I'm not so much about when or how soon after the event it gets posted. It's about the reoccurrence or the
yeah, okay.
Because you might be
man.
Well, you might be on a road trip. You might be doing a bit of a road trip, not even fishing potentially, just whatever. Happen to get out for a day, but you really don't look at your phone again for another few days because you're on your way home. Then you get home and you go, this was a great day out. I'm okay with that. I'm just not okay with you.
Yeah, that's different.
I just
recapping a trip.
Yeah, I just don't want you then reposting it 7 times in the next 8 days.
Or the cheeky post of a couple of fish popping up with the caption, "Did really well 3.5 weeks ago." Can't have people fishing a spot, mate.
Oh, no. Yeah, no. But the resurfacing one's interesting because it's a weird one. Because if you put it in perspective, another event, you get engaged, for example. Typically, a lot of people will post on social media. It's a massive event, you know.
Yeah.
Like, me and my fiance just got engaged. You don't then repost that a month later, though, do you? And say, oh, by the way, just in
Still
case you missed it the
engaged.
first time, we're still engaged. Just in case you didn't see it, guys.
What's your stance? What's your stance on posting a Facebook memory? So say, you know, we went and had an epic trip on the Snapper, stuck to the 48-hour rule, and then 12 months later, Facebook says, guess what you did on this day 12 months ago? You smacked the Snapper.
Yeah, that's it. Gee, we're getting into some territory here I'm not prepared for. But
pretty deep.
That's a I don't personally typically do a lot of Facebooking anymore, but I think I can handle that if it's
kind
like
of okay.
I can handle that if it's like, I remember when you got pantsed by Kingfish ads, you know, and taking the piss. But then if you then save out all those photos again and then recycle them over the next couple of weeks,
it's not on.
It's a one-hit wonder. It's a share of a memory and move on. But yeah. Oh, look, it's a touchy subject. It's there's some serial offenders out there, and I don't know whether they're a bit worried that they're going to be forgotten or there's a lot of it. But anyway, look, how long can you post a fish photo on social media after the event? I just think it's just once and move on.
Yeah, and it's within 48 hours, unless it's a trip. Like clearly, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
totally. Yeah.
Don't sit on it for 3.5 weeks.
Don't be a complete dick about it. I mean, you know, it's the same fish, mate. You know. But I tell you what you can do, and I tell you what is okay to post as many times as you could possibly imagine, and that is sharing the Deep Drop podcast. Like you can post that multiple times a day for every day of the year if you like.
Definitely no 48-hour rule.
No, and if you do that, mate, we'll tip our hats to you. Yeah. We'll name a segment after you.
And if you have fond memories of subscribing to the Deep Drop podcast and it pops up in 12 months' time, post it. Happy to see it. I'll like it.
Yeah. Throwback Thursday when I subscribed. It's great. This is what it's about. The interaction.
Yeah.
And we'll finish on that note, Ads, because I do want to sincerely thank our audience out there. We have the best listeners. I'm saying globally.
Yeah, it's a big statement, but it's one I'm willing to stand behind, Luke.
Yeah, well, and they're loyal. They get involved on Instagram, and for those of you that get involved regularly on Instagram, again, greatest engagement people in the world, and we thank you for it. And it means a lot to us because we're just up here sort of giving our opinions and talking a bit of rubbish. And then when we put the questions out to the public, Ads, what we get back from you guys listening and engaging on social media is, more often than not, how many times have we texted each other, Adam, going, did you see that comment? That makes perfect sense.
It's better than our dribble.
Better than us. It's so good. We're learning so much out of this. I hope you're having a bit of fun with it out there, because that's what we're doing. We're having a bit of fun with this great sport, hobby, pastime, whatever you call it, that is fishing, and we continue to do so. So subscribe wherever you get your podcast, because it is free. Tell your friends about it. Send them a link. It's pretty easy. Just some people struggle with the whole technical side of it, Ads, but you just got to give them a bit of a nudge and say, hey, all you have to do is press a button and subscribe.
Just press here.
And get involved on Instagram. We love it. Thank you so much, and we'll be back. We'll be back again, Ads. We will be back again.